It's good to be with you kids on this Tuesday evening. Me in Georgia and you all over the world. So let's start with a question from a viewer, and then I'll tell you some interesting news because I'm going to need your help. And I'll need it like tonight. I'm not sure, this viewer says, what happened, but my check-in today with you could be almost a copy of what I sent you 5 or 6 weeks ago. I woke from a bad dream about 4 o'clock this morning that left me feeling strange. One of those dreams that seems so real you wonder how you could even have dreamt it, or actually whether it was real or a dream. My mind wouldn't quit, and it just kept going from thought to thought. I tried to get calm by praying. I tried to remember past conversations where I'd had with loving people, but the longer it went, the more annoying it got. My youngest son awoke shortly thereafter at 5 in the morning with a nightmare and called me into his room. I went out and laid with him for a while and could feel myself getting annoyed. I got back to my room about 5:30 and didn't feel like I ever did get back to sleep. I laid awake trying to figure out what the heck had happened. Was it something that happened yesterday? Was it something last night? Was it the dream? What got me feeling so annoyed and got my mind racing that I just couldn't relax and be at peace? I used to do this all the time in the past, but it's getting better lately as I've been making calls and contacting people to love me. So this felt like a huge setback. So as you describe racing thoughts, and just can't keep your thoughts centered on one thing, very likely that's related, often is, well, it's often related just the fear and anxiety of not feeling loved, sure, but it's also often related to an alteration in, you can call it what you want, brain chemistry, brain wiring. It may very well be part of who you are. Because many people, when you talk about racing thought, they don't even have any idea what you're talking about. So some people are just built different. No criticism in this, doesn't make you worse. People with racing thoughts like that can also often have enormous talents that other people don't have. They may be more creative, whatever. But it's part of you. So it's helpful to understand that you will simply have times like this. Like you said, you've been doing better and better. You've been making calls. You've been feeling more loved. This has been improving. And then, poof, you have an event like this, and you're all worried that you're set back to the beginning. One of the greatest fears we have in times like this is what you just said. You said, I just don't understand it, essentially. Or I think in your words, what the heck happened? And that uncertainty just makes us nuts, because naturally we're thinking, so if I don't understand it, then this could be something that's going to afflict me all the rest of my life. Oh, man. We can live with almost any discomfort, confusion, and pain if we know that it's going to end at 6 o'clock tomorrow. If we know there's an end to this thing, we can put up with almost anything. But an indeterminate end or no end, that's pretty frightening. So think back over the last several months as you've been feeling loved more unconditionally, as your happiness has been improving. If you'll think back, you'll recall, as you're describing here, that you've had times when your thoughts were racing, but then the next day or hours later, you managed to feel calmer and more at peace. So this is not some cute little affirmation, oh, well, everything passes, but it does. Now, it doesn't if we don't know a better way to live. Time does not heal all wounds, as the aphorism says. That's not true. In fact, often with time, the wounds get worse. But in this case, as you keep taking the next single right step, one at a time, just relax, don't gain a big panic. Bit by bit, you're going to discover that these times where you get all freaky and panicky happen less often and tend to last less long. So it can be an enormous sense of comfort as you're having these panicky, crazy thoughts. just to remember, this is going to go away. That very often can dampen your fear considerably, because now you know there's an end. So then you can remember, I'm just a little crazy right now. And I don't mean crazy in a critical way or self-deprecating way. Nope, I'm not thinking clearly, so I'm kind of nuts. And I don't have to sit here and spend half the night going, why is this happening? Oh my gosh, everything's going downhill. I'm blah, 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 blah. All of that why stuff, unproductive. So this isn't going to last forever. I can take steps that will gradually improve this. In the moment, I may not be able to get rid of this panicky sensation. So I'm just going to sit here and have it happen. And it will pass. And the more consistently you take those steps to feel loved and be loving, they happen less often and they don't last as long. So it's an easy thing just to say relax, but it's not just thinking positive and relaxing. You're doing this with greater understanding, and that makes a big difference. You continue. The next morning I tried to convey to my wife, Susie, how my night had gone, but she just reached out and touched my hand and said she loved me. She didn't get what I'd been through. She didn't understand. She seemed to be more in a hurry to get the kids off to school. Again, part of your fear is that your happiness is over. Yeah, it may be lost for a brief period of time, but you just had a bad night, or you had a bad morning, a hiccup in your forward progress. Yeah, well, it's not a huge step back. You just discovered that progress usually doesn't continue upward and onward unimpeded. No, there are little bumps in the road. So as you realize that, you'll get better at understanding that, or being less demanding when you know there's an end to it. Then you're not as desperate. Then instead of saying, oh my gosh, all she did was touch my hand and it didn't make me suddenly better. Well, okay, so recognize with some gratitude that she did touch your hand. Wow, she paid attention to you. Now, if you're grateful for that, that'll multiply the effect fivefold. If it's still not enough, you can take her by the hand and say, I need you for 60 seconds. 60 seconds. I know she's getting the kids off to school. Well, 60 seconds rarely makes the difference between them making it and not. And say, can I see you? Take her into the next room and say, look, this panicky thing's making me nuts. I can't even communicate it to you clearly. So could I just get a hug for 30 seconds? That's all. You don't have to make me feel better. You're not responsible for how I feel. Just, could I get a hug for 60 seconds? And then you just hold her. Let her hold you. Wow. When we relax, when we see that there's always something to do, we get far less freaky than when we don't see that there's something to do. We don't get nearly as upset. Just looking here to the next question. Actually, let me tell you about a need that I've got. I got a call from a television producer just moments ago before we started this. And they're looking for, there's a large cable television show that's been on for some time now. And they're looking for parents who are willing to take a couple of troubled teenage kids from the same family, it's usually one or two kids, and take them into their home and help change them. So either show them a different way of parenting, be an example to them. In other words, change the environment that they're in a positive way. And so we're looking for a family where there's two parents in the family and at least one, preferably couple, but one's good, child still at home. So if you are such a family, or if you know of such a family that could implement the principles of real love in a consistent, productive way with a couple of wayward teens, and they'd be there for 1 week, and you'd have a film crew there too. Then at the end of the week, the parents of these difficult kids would come and see what you've done. So it's not like you're taking 2 kids from prison who've killed somebody and being left with them unsupervised. No, there will be producers there from the show. You just be teaching them the principles of real love and helping them understand how they could be happier, the kids. I regret the format of the show a little bit, because if it was my choice, you'd have the parents there with them and teach the parents how to love their kids, but that's not how they do it. So you get to make a difference for a week, which is pretty easy to do when the kids are suddenly taken from an unloving environment to a loving one. And then you can tell the parents more about that when they arrive. So if you know a family like that, 2-parent family with kids at home that could help these kids, oh man, that'd be fun. So you call me at my home number, and then we'll put you in contact with the producers of the show, and we'll go from there. And I'd be happy to coach whatever family is doing this project with these kids and help them in the parenting. But this could be just very cool. And then you'll be, of course, television stars. Here's a viewer who says, here's one that I've been battling with for a long time and finally figured out how to articulate it today. Question: even though I know that I'm lovable, no matter what anybody says, especially those empty family members who even seem cruel, how can I lock in the belief that I am lovable no matter what? Instead, I doubt this and always default to my family's negative messages to me as the highest authority. I want to lock in the belief that I'm lovable no matter what and ignore what other empty people say. I have attracted men for romantic relationships that confirm my lie that I'm unlovable because some of my family members think so. I must break this pattern. I want to believe that I truly am lovable and that my loving others is valuable. This is a very important principle, because you've had your parents, other family members, friends, teachers, ministers, who knows, very likely all of them, certainly the great majority of them, tell you that you're not worthy of being loved as you are your entire life. And if you count each time they tell you as 1, you have a little clicker, 2, 3, you've been told this probably 10,000 times. No kidding. Each little unloving glance, each little rolling of the eyes, each sigh of impatience is another click. So you've been told 10,000 times you're flawed, irreparably flawed. So then somebody in the real love community comes along and says, well, that's not true. You're not irreparably flawed. You are worth loving. Well, this looks kind of imbalanced, doesn't it? So we've got 10,000 voices telling you you're screwed up, and then one fool, and it does look like a fool because it's one voice counteracting these 10,000, who says, no, that's not the case. Well, it would seem like the fool would be outvoted, doesn't it? So why wouldn't you just keep believing the empty and blind people? Because the empty people are all blind. They can't see you. If you understood what I was saying just now, you'd never listen to those voices again. So let's say that I'm starving to death. I walk into the room and you have a sandwich in your hand. And I ask you if I can have it. Now, of course, you're not aware how starving I am. And you tell me that you're saving it for somebody else, or you're going to eat it later, or whatever. Now, if I'm starving to death, what am I going to conclude about you? That you are cruel, mean, terrible, unloving, whatever. But you see, my assessment of you is based entirely on what? Let's say, for example, that you were saving your sandwich for your own starving child. I don't know any of that. My assessment of you that you're a terrible person is based entirely on not who you are, but how I see it. And it's worse than that. It's not even what I see, because I see with distorted eyes. It's based on what I need. And that's true of every unloving person on the planet. Anybody who ever tells you, well, you're awful, you're stupid, anytime they do that, what they're really telling you about is not you. What they're telling you about is their emptiness and fear, and how you have somehow failed to address their all-important center of the universe needs. So when somebody addresses you only according to your ability to fulfill their needs, is their opinion of you worth anything? It's worth nothing. In fact, let's rate it. Let's say that you get $100 for perceiving somebody correctly. You get nothing for perceiving them incorrectly. So you've had $10,000, 10,000 people who have told you that you're worthless, every one of whom was empty and blind that they told you that. That's a total of 10,000 times 0. Everybody can do that math. I can do that math in my head. So 10,000 people's votes, 0 value. That doesn't make them valueless, let's be clear. But it makes their opinion worthless. Then I come along, or anybody in real love, doesn't have to be me, anybody who's not feeling empty and afraid, and because they don't, they can see you clearly. They don't see you as just having a sandwich that you're going to give to them or not give to them. They don't see you as holding a knife in your hand that's going to hurt them or not hurt them. People who feel love can see you. So if somebody in the real love community can tell you just one time that you are lovable, that you are worthwhile, that's worth more in one utterance than the 10,000 people who told you you're worthless. Poof, just like that. If you understand what I'm saying. It's not like we're discounting the worth of all these people who have lied to us all these years. We're just seeing clearly that their opinion is worthless. Now, even understanding that in our heads is not enough. And so we need to hear that we're lovable, that we're worthwhile from, a series of real love people, people who are unconditionally loving a bunch of times. Now, fortunately, we don't have to hear it 10,000 times. If we've been told we're not worthwhile 10,000 times, it's not a one-for-one deal, because it's all about our faith. Once we get the principles that I'm talking about here, that only the opinion of a sighted person matters, you can change your opinion of yourself like poof. I've seen people change their self-evaluation in an hour, 1 hour, as they felt loved unconditionally. Other people take longer, like me. Most of us take longer than an hour. It may take a day or a week. It may take months. Some of us take years before we really believe what's true. And that's what I'm telling you. So how do you get over these opinions that you've been told all this time? Is see that the opinion of somebody who actually loves you unconditionally is not just more pleasing. It's not just funner. It's not just something you like to believe. It's truthful. When you get that, you'll never be the same. It's a hoot. Here's somebody who says, I'm afraid of talking on the telephone. I avoid it whenever I can, and when I can't, I put it off to the last minute. When it's time to actually make the call, my heart starts to race, my throat becomes parched, I feel an overall sense of dread. Of course, it's not the talking itself I fear, but the rejection I face. So, you're doing a great job of offering the explanation I was going to give. You seem to get this in your head already. I'm afraid that when I do speak, people will sense both my anxiety and social ineptitude and judge me for it. So you got a pretty good picture of this there, baby. I find it impossible to participate in real love conference calls for this very reason. Having listened in on several calls, I see that the overall environment is loving and accepting, but still, I have never spoken. Basically, I see myself as inferior to others, not as smart, accomplished, socially adept, which is so often why I hesitate to speak. I realize that this perspective is rooted in imitation love. Well, you're giving up all my answers, so what am I going to have to say at the end? You really get this in your head. As I'm basing my own worthiness of love on what merits I possess, And that by protecting myself in this way, I eliminate the possibility of feeling unconditionally loved. So you really understand, but then you continue. But I still remain quiet. I know that a single critical or judgmental response does not exclude the possibility of finding real love elsewhere. And that negative responses are simply a reflection of what the other person is unable to give in the moment, which is what I was saying in answer to that first person's comment or question. But knowing this still doesn't take away my fear. How do I get over the initial hurdle of fearing rejection and start to speak? You've just articulated this so well. So you've read the book, at least one of them, maybe more than one by what you say here. You understand the principles. You know what's causing you to be afraid. You know that it's impeding your ability to feel love, and still you just sit there and you freeze. Which is proof again that books and principles don't change people. Real love does. And so the only way that you're going to feel it is from experience. So at some point, you're going to have to recognize that you would actually have to be truthful in order to feel accepted while you are flawed, inept, in your own words, stupid, incapable, all those things that you talked about. Well, honey, you just did it. You didn't speak up with your mouth, but you spoke up in front of potentially 100,000 people who will eventually see this video archive. You spoke up in front of all those people, and yet, and you're telling me what you are, and yet you're being unconditionally loved right now. Well, that was pretty brave. Now, yeah, it's a little harder to do that vocally, live, but the important thing I'm telling you is feel what I'm doing now. I see what you're saying. You're frightened, you're empty, you're unskilled socially, phrase it in the worst possible words. You're a coward. You're gutless. I know. And you're all of those things just because you've never felt the peace and the power of feeling loved. So, not just listen with your ears, feel what we're doing right now. You're being truthful, and I'm loving you. We may be 1,000 miles apart, irrelevant. You have an opportunity to feel that. And it's because you took the risk to speak up. So the next time you're on a call, you'll have the opportunity to speak up again. Except this won't be your first time now. Now it'll be your second time because you've already spoken up. And it can also be really helpful. So the first thing to remember is you already done it. Second is you really just have to keep doing it. But the third is often we don't speak because we don't know what words to say. That just paralyzes us. So what can you say? Well, you wrote them all out here, honey. You just did it. So take what you've written here and just do it again. And say, I'd like to speak. That's all you have to say first. Write this down if need be. Say, I'd like to speak. And if you're talking to somebody one-on-one, well, that should be pretty easy. If you're on a conference call, say it again if somebody doesn't hear you the first time until somebody says, well, go ahead, Fred. And then you say, just what you said here. I feel stupid. I never speak up because I'm afraid of what will happen. I feel socially inept. I'm terrified speaking right now. Done. You just spoke 2 or 3 sentences. That's plenty. You can do it in 1 sentence if you want. You could say, I feel stupid to speak right now and I'm frightened. There, that's 1 sentence. And then you'll discover that there will be somebody on the call who will be insightful, caring enough to understand what you just said and accept you. And when it turns out to be a good experience, and you'll find them, now you have even more faith and courage to do it the next time. So, way to go. You've already started. Shoot. Apparently you weren't as afraid as you thought. Here's somebody who says, let's see. I've been attempting to love and teach my kids for nearly 3 years now. I really have not been capable until the last year. I teach them real love principles from the parenting book every night for 15 minutes in family meetings. I've tried to be more consistent in terms of giving and following through on consequences. However, I still struggle with the kids not listening. They also don't seem significantly happier. I know that I do still sometimes express frustration, so I know that there's room for improvement on my part. What else am I missing? Is it possible that when I teach them something in the moment, that something negative is happening, that they feel I'm criticizing them? What else could I be missing? So, if you're still frustrated sometimes when you speak to them, clearly, you need to feel more loved by other people. That's a start. You need to get more input about the effect that you're having on your kids. So, after you've had a conversation where the kids refuse to listen, I would suggest that you memorize, roughly, what you said and how you said it, and then share that with a real love friend or two. Say, I did this and this, and get their input as to why the kids might possibly have not felt listened to. That's huge. Then I would also suggest asking your kids. Show them an example of what real unconditional loving looks like. There are a bunch of examples like that in the parenting book. Here's what a loving parent would say. And if you mimic for them, you say, okay, as a parent, I would say this. And since you're not in the middle of a crisis, since you're just reading an example from the book, they can get an idea what speaking without disappointment and irritation look like. So then you say, have you noticed times when I speak to you and I'm not like this? When I'm not free of disappointment and irritation? Sometimes when I speak, do you sense that I'm frustrated with you, that I'm disappointed, that I'm annoyed? Unless they're completely oblivious, they'll say, uh-huh. And then you say to them, the next time I speak to you and I'm not being kind, when I'm being angry, disappointed, whatever, point it out to me so that I can get to the place where I can identify it. So that's 3 things I've talked about so far. Another one would be that it's almost certain that you're not consistent. So when I hear that children are not listening to their parents, I'm going, all right, first thing is they're probably being irritated. The second thing is the parents. And the second thing is that parents aren't consistent with kids. Kids don't do what they're told to do, or they do what they're told not to do. And the parents will intervene and say something about 10% of the time. Really, often worse. So the kid's irresponsible, whatever, and the parent goes, oh, I don't want to deal with this. So they let it go. In the beginning, when you're training kids to follow a new set of principles, loving and teaching, you can't ever let it go. You have to deal with all of them. Every time a kid fights, every time a kid has a snotty mouth, you have to deal with them all. Then remember, and we're on like the 5th point now, and I can't remember the first 4, but then remember that loving them is the first most important thing. If you're just applying consequences every time they screw up, why would a kid listen to you? You're doing it for your own convenience. So you have to have 0 disappointment, 0 irritation. Then you have to consistently teach them every time. And let's say that a child's not listening. Because I've seen this with many kids. You know, they just sort of blow you off like, You have to stop them right then and say, so, tell me what I just told you. See, we deliver monologues and then we walk off. Well, is that how they do school? I mean, in school, does the teacher stand up and lecture for an entire year and then at the end of the year go, wow, man, I really hope they got that? No, the teacher says every 5 days, 3 days, 2 weeks, we're going to do a test. Now, don't turn it into a formal exam, okay? But as you're speaking, if it's not obvious that the child gets it, you say, so tell me in your words what I just told you. If the kid wasn't listening, they won't be able to answer you. If they were half listening, they'll give you a half answer, and you can help modify what they understand. Or in some circumstances, you don't tell them anything. They screw up, they make a mistake, they're irritated, fight with a sibling, and you just come in and say, so, you teach me what you're learning from this experience. As opposed to you being the constant taskmaster. Okay, this means that, and you should have done it. Boring. No, in class they don't do that. I mean, the Socratic method has been an effective means of teaching from the beginning. Well, of course, from the beginning of time, but it's only been called Socratic since, Socrates in Greece. And it's a method where we teach people by asking them questions. It turns out that people often know the right answer, and we just have to keep asking them creative questions to bring out the right answer. So 2 kids are fighting, and you say, so what are you 2 learning from this? And unless your kids are very experienced in the beginning, they'll go, well, I've learned that he's a butthead. Not exactly the lesson you're looking for. And so you say, so describe to me your behavior. Well, all I was doing, I know, we'll kill your brother later. Were you being loving? Well, did you respond lovingly? And you keep teaching them, asking these questions until they can identify, well, no, I wasn't particularly loving. Were you, for example, if they can't admit that they weren't loving, you can at least say, so would you like it if somebody treated you in exactly the way you just treated your brother? Well, of course not. So in the moment that you're being snotty, and put a name on it, in the moment you're being snotty to your brother, and you can't do this with sarcasm or irritation, but you have to name it. In the moment you were treating your brother this way, were you happy? Not happy like entertained. Like, yeah, you really got your brother. No. Of course, they like that. But were you feeling peaceful? Were you feeling loving? Were you feeling close to your brother? Were you getting the kind of feeling you like when I love you? See, that's the kind of question. Again, they're going to say, no. So, what do you learn from this? You see, you help them teach themselves. You are constantly probing and testing to see if they get the principles, and you have to do it every time. So you love them first, then you love and teach them, and then if none of that is working, then maybe you apply consequences. But boy, you leap to consequences in a big hurry, and you will lose. Long answer to a short question. Here's somebody who says, let's see, I have a question. I've been mailing 1-page letters to my son in California every week or so. Once, when I talked to him about my partner's illness, cancer problem, he asked me not to contact him anymore. I asked him why. He said that he wants to be in control and determine how much contact he has with me. I told him that I would not leave messages on his phone anymore or text him, but that I would continue to send him an occasional letter. We had a lovely conversation, and he thanked me for hearing him out. We agreed to disagree. So, he decided that he did not want me contacting him in any way, not by letter, not by phone, not by text. And I said I was going to keep writing periodically. I told him to simply throw the letters in the trash if he didn't want to read them. He said he couldn't do that. So he has a little obsessive compulsive in him, and somehow felt obligated to read them. Our kids are actually, now what does that show you? Our kids are actually dying to hear what we have to say. No kidding. They say they don't want to hear it, but they really do. You know why? Because it's about them. So I decided to send postcards because they're shorter and maybe have less emotional charge. So what do you think? This kid wants to know he's loved. He wants to know that his teeth ache. He wants to know that he's loved. So there must be, you only got two ways to go. There's either something wrong with him that he's incapable of feeling your love. Possible. He might be depressed. He might be bipolar. He might be schizophrenic. Who knows? But then there's the second possibility, which is far and away the more likely in all the parents I've talked to, and that is that there's something about the way you communicate to him that doesn't really convey unconditional love. And there are a lot of ways that we do that. We say, I remember one time a lady was writing her son, and I said, so before you write him your next letter, send it to me. And so she carefully edited her letter, and she said, I've taken out everything demanding, controlling, angry, impatient, unloving, anything. So I'm just going to send it to you just to run it by you. So I read the letter she wrote to her son. In every sentence, every single sentence, she had something where she was accusing, demanding, blaming, expecting something. She could not stop herself. She couldn't do it. So I'm suggesting that there are many ways we can do it. You may be, for example, doing something as innocent as saying, what have you been doing? How's work? So did you get that job promotion? Did you see, just by asking questions to a kid who feels pushed, we demonstrate an expectation that they'll answer the question. I know, that just sounds like you're kidding me. I can't even ask a question? Well, yeah, some people can, but in your relationship with him, I'll bet you that you have asked questions of him in a way where he feels a sense of obligation. And notice what he said to you. I want to control how much contact I have with you, as opposed to the contact you're having with him, which very likely has hooks in it. We don't just communicate with our children. We reach out and we cling to them. We sink our little nasty fish hooks in their flesh, and then we pull them toward us. And then later we go, well, that's not what I meant. Well, yeah, actually, it is what we meant. Now, why do I say that? Because unless we mean not to, we will end up doing it, which translates to, that's what we meant. So I would suggest you mention a partner, that with your partner or a couple of other real love people, when you write a letter, and I still think it's a good idea that you write to him periodically, but not too often and not too long, and that you run your message by somebody who would be genuinely capable of seeing you, not just agreeing with you. So run it by them, and then if there's nothing accusing, demanding, nothing in there, judgmental, zero. For example, you can just talk about how you're doing. Hey, we were doing this, and I went out with, and we went to dinner, and light stuff to start with. Eventually, you might even want to talk about mistakes that you've made with him. But you don't push him to anything. And then mingle it. Mingle it with packages. He'd probably open a package that had chocolate bars in it. And then he begins to associate your sending something with something pleasant. Who knows? But relax. You write him, just tell him about you. You send him nice packages. And then once in a blue moon, you could call him. But you don't ever say, when are you going to call me? When are you going to come visit? And I believe you'll see a difference, but we'll see. Let's see. Here's somebody who says, would you help me understand why you say that we're wrong when we say that trust is something that needs to be earned? Oh, that's a pretty simple concept. Not to imply that you are stupid not to understand a simple concept, but it's simple, but it runs against the grain so much that it just makes people crazy, which is why you're asking this question. The way we normally do it is this. The only reason for me not to trust you is, on the whole, less because of what you've done than what everybody in my life has done to me beforehand. So I'm an untrusting person. That's the reason I say trust is earned, because I don't trust anybody until they prove it. So look what position that puts me in. It means that I'm empty and afraid that I'll be hurt. Yeah? So you come into my life. I automatically see you like everybody else. You will hurt me. That's why I'm telling you trust is earned. If I didn't already have an opinion that you would hurt me, I wouldn't be talking about earned trust. I'd simply be giving it to you. So I already distrust you. I assume that given the opportunity, you'll do something to stab me, screw me, betray me, lie to me, whatever. Well, with that attitude, look how I've already labeled you. Distrustworthy, hurtful, unkind, selfish, all that. I've already formed that opinion. And it is a known fact, they've actually studied this, that once you've labeled somebody, you will tend to use every piece of evidence you get about that person to conform to your already formed opinion. So you just look at me sideways. Well, it couldn't possibly be that you just happened to have your head turned in another direction and therefore had to look at me sideways. No. If you look at me sideways, then you don't like me. You distrust me. You're wary of me. You're judgmental. You say, good morning to me. If I don't trust you, I'm going to take it as a test. I'm going to take it as, oh, you say good morning, and now you're going to judge what I have to say. Every motion you make toward me. Again, this has been studied extensively. It's not a guess on my part, although I've now seen it, many times in person. If I have been told that you are a murderer, that you're a violent, vicious, hateful person, and you reach toward me with your hand, what am I going to see? I'm going to see an assault. I will back up or run away, whereas you may simply have been offering me your hand in friendship. So if we tell people that trust has to be earned, in the first place, the odds that they'll ever earn it are almost zero. Now they have to turn their bodies inside out. They have to leap tall buildings with a single bound before we'll ever believe that they're trustworthy. And even if we go, well, they might be trustworthy, then all that person has to do is make one mistake. And then we say, oh, well, yep. See? Told you. Told you he was like that. How many times have you heard people do that with you? We've all done it. Yeah, see? He had me faked out for a little while, but no, I choose to trust people. I choose to trust, not that they will always be loving. Now, you're going to really experience a lot of disappointment if you think that. I don't trust that people will always be nice to me, kind to me, efficient, effective, reliable, on time. No, I don't trust that. That's just nuts because people are flawed. No, I choose to trust people that they're doing their best. That changes everything. If I assume that you're doing your best and you are hateful to me, solely because I chose to trust that you're doing your best, how am I now going to see you? Well, let's see. If you're being hateful, and I trust that you're doing your best, then you must be in pain. Duh, there's nothing left. You're either in pain or you're just inherently black evil. That couldn't be true, because I've seen you in moments when you're not hateful. So, see how it changes everything for me to assume that you're doing the best you can, to trust that you're doing the best you can. That is by far the most accurate way to perceive people. It's not just a positive way. Well, I'll think positive and trust them. It's more accurate. It's more productive. It's more truthful to trust people that they're doing their best. And then, that simple act of giving you my trust rather than you earning it changes the way I see everything you do and profoundly changes our relationship. So this trust is earned thing is just horrible. Here's somebody who says, excuse me, my husband of 21 years told me 4 weeks ago that he's no longer interested in being married to me. And then 2 weeks ago, he tells me that he has a girlfriend. I'm just guessing that he had the girlfriend sooner than 2 weeks, just a shot in the dark. I love him and can see that he's been drowning for much of our time together. My biggest concern at this point is how we tell our kids, who are older teenagers, about us separating, and do we tell them about the girlfriend? So, my first move before I gave up would be to say to him, honey, let me list the ways that I've screwed up in this relationship. It's worth a shot. What do you got to lose? He's leaving. I've screwed up, and I'd like to learn to do it differently. I'd like to learn to do it dramatically differently. I'll do whatever it takes if that's something that you're willing to do. I'd be happy to hear ways that I've hurt you that I don't even know about. I just believe that before we give up, I think it would be worth, because of the cost that it's going to be in the long run, because there's always a cost. Some guy gets it into his head that it's going to be easier to have a new girlfriend, and in the midst of that flush of excitement, he thinks this is going to be wonderful. Yeah, it's like being flush with the excitement of shooting up with cocaine. When people do that, they don't think, oh, let's see, now the rest of the price is I could be an addict, I could become an addict, I could lose my job, I could drive my car off the road and kill 2 kids on a bike on the side of the road. No addict who shoots up thinks of all that. In the same way, leaving a marriage is a big move. So you might just say, I'm not trying to talk you out of this. No kidding, I'm not. I am suggesting that I think it's worth our trying, but instead this time, and you have to accurately identify your mistakes, your flaws. You got to be just chillingly honest and, describe those flaws to him. And then also be chillingly honest about how thoroughly the two of you have approached integrating real love into your marriage. So you can say, look, I've made all these mistakes, I've had all these flaws, and now, in addition, even though I knew the principles of real love in my head, frankly, I didn't make a lot of calls. I didn't really connect with other women on a gut level and get what it is to feel enough unconditional love that I could bring it back and give it to you. I didn't spend enough time trying to work with you and discuss the issues in our marriage. Here are all the ways that I have failed to take this seriously. So now we're in trouble. It may be over. But I think it's worth taking it seriously. Let's get a coach. Let's go to where a coach is and do this intensively for a period of time and see if we can make a difference. Because by the time you get to this place, having a few conversations on the phone isn't going to do anything. You're going to need some intensive counseling if he's willing to do that. But at least describe to him that possibility. Now, let's assume you do all that. You offer more intensive effort, you're more truthful, you're everything. Just brutally honest. And he says, nah. Well, what can you do? You can't, chain him to the house. And then if you're going to tell the kids, you just tell the kids, Dad has made a decision to leave. What we usually do in cases like this is one of two things. We either blast our partner and make them a monster, or we cover it up. And we say, well, it's not working out between your dad and myself. Leaving the kids going, what does that mean? Is Dad having sex with animals? Are you now going to run off with another woman? The kids are going, what? What does that mean? So you got to tell them. Or they fill in the blank with the worst imaginable scenarios in their head. So you say, there's been unhappiness in our marriage for a long time, 20 years or whatever it is. However long that's been true. And, we learned some principles 2 or 3 years ago, or however long you've known about real love. And I can tell you that I didn't adequately apply them. I didn't become loving enough. I didn't do enough to both become more loving myself and to share it with your father and to work it out with him. So that's my flaw. And then you say, and apparently your father has had a girlfriend for, and I tell you, it's been longer than 2 weeks. Find out how long. Ask him at least to tell you the truth about that. And then say, your father's had a girlfriend for a year, whatever. And I was not aware of that. So not being aware of it, I didn't do enough. And so now he has decided to leave. It was not a joint decision. I mean, look what you just told me here. You didn't say, well, my husband and I decided not to be married. No, he decided. So you're not attacking him. You're simply telling them the truth. And that's what kids are looking for, is the truth. So I would try all of those steps before I did the conversation with the kids. And then if there's any more we can do, let me know. It's a scary time. Scary time for the kids, scary time for you. It's just, wow. Here's somebody who says, our 12-year-old daughter, let me make sure I have the right one. Yes. Yeah. Our 12-year-old daughter argues about everything. If we say the sky is blue, she says it's aquamarine. If we say, there's 3 crows on the fence, she says there are 4. She just argues about everything. It's tiresome. So what do? Well, obviously she gets a real kick out of correcting you. Kids think correcting their parents is just great because it makes them feel smarter, makes them feel more powerful. We all enjoy a little shot of power from time to time, and to know more than your parents and to correct them. Oh, man, that's the jackpot for a kid. So the first thing to do is to listen to her. So if you say the sky is blue and she says it's aquamarine, if you can find any way to agree with her, if you're going, oh, it's not really aquamarine, but close enough, you go, well, you're right. Thanks. The argument's over now, isn't it? But see, you feel some sense of competition with her, some sense of conflict because, like you said, it's tiresome. It becomes a lot less tiresome when you recognize that partly they enjoy correcting you and partly they just enjoy knowing stuff. And they love to just push what they know. So you really have to be careful to listen. You describe an event. They say, no, it happened this way. Well, there's a lot of truth in what you're saying. Yeah, I left out of my account elements that you have supplied. Look how much smarter we are together than separately. Oh, and how cool is that? As opposed to arguing with the kid and going, well, no, that's not the case. I've known parents who have I've known a lot of parents like this actually, who've never been wrong with their children, ever, one time till they die. When our children get older, they don't say, wow, I am so grateful because I had the rightest parents that I've ever known. No, I've never known anybody say that. Not and smile. So tell them, hey, thanks for saying that. Look how much more we know with the two of us. Now, if the child keeps it up and argues about everything and is contentious about it, but see, most kids don't continue to be contentious if we genuinely listen to them. But let's say that she is. Let's say she just keeps it up and she just corrects you and everybody else all the time. At some point, it would be helpful if you sat down with her and said, so notice, I just said that there were no birds on the wire. And you said, well, there might be one. Well, honey, there aren't any. There are no birds. Or little innocent things, because I've heard kids do this. It's a nice day. And the child says, well, it might rain. Yeah, it might. And then you say to the child, so you're right that it might rain. You are right about that. But now, look at what I said. I said, it's a nice day. Then you said it might rain. So what you were doing was contradicting what I was saying, rather than listening to what I was saying. Your emphasis was criticizing, detracting from, saying but, adding something. And see, that's fine as long as you first listen to the other person. So you could say, it really is a nice day. Because it is. It's beautiful. And I still have some concern that it might rain. See, now you've listened to the person who has just spoken. And then tell the child, if you always contradict me and you don't ever agree, I won't personally be bothered. But I'm sharing with you an important principle. Now listen, because I'm doing this for you. If you continue to do this, you will alienate everybody around you. Because most people do not like to be corrected. Most of the time when people speak, they're sharing with you a piece of them, a piece of how they feel, of what they know. It's them that they're offering. That when people speak, they're talking about themselves. Even if they're talking about just disconnected information, they're still talking about themselves. And when you come in and go, no, that's how they feel, is slapped. So you can do it with me, but I'm going to point it out to you if you continue to do it, because it will end up harming you. It will make you feel more isolated from people. It will certainly isolate other people from you, and you'll have less of a feeling of compassion, connection, less of an ability to interact with people than if you actually hear what they're saying, respond in some way to indicate that you hear what they're saying, and then if you have some additional comment to make, you might do that occasionally. But even to make an additional comment all the time is usually pretty annoying to people. They call them know-it-alls. They call them difficult, contentious, detractors, uncooperative. Those are the names that they have for people who are doing what you're doing right now. And I emphasize, I'm telling you this because I care about you, not because it bothers me. But of course, you can't tell a kid that if it does bother you. You can't lie, they'll know. If you're irritated when they contradict you, you say, "Now I'm just telling you this for your benefit." The kid's going to go, "So you're stupid and a liar," which isn't going to go over very well. So, great, delightful chat. Thanks for all your questions. And at the beginning of the chat, I mentioned that if you are a couple or you know of a couple that is implementing the principles of real love and parenting in their lives well, not perfectly, just well, and you got a two-parent family with kids at home, we're looking for some people to do a pretty large cable television show. So let me know if that's the case. You can email me at greg@reallove.com, and then I'll give you my phone number if you don't already have it. Seems like the whole world has it already, but I'd be glad to supply it. And then we'll talk about that. So thanks very much. We'll talk to you in a week. And in the meantime, no surprise, it's always about real love. Talk to you then.